wait, is it over? You know what? I should have known. I should have known. Only Square Enix could find a way to make Just Cause 3 boring. Just Cause 3! The game that was preceded by a game where you could tether a dude to a propane tank, shoot it, and watch him rocket in whatever direction the physics felt like taking him this time. The game that was Goat Simulator before Goat Simulator even had a Kickstarter. This is what I'm talking about. This is why you just let the trailer do its work. This is why you gotta have confidence in what you're selling to people. It's the old adage. Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I might remember. But involve me and I will understand. This is why we have people we trust, journalists we trust and follow to go and play the games for us in a place that we can't access right now. But if worse comes to worse, you go down one step in the ladder, not two. Okay, we're not here to listen to you speak, dude. Just let the games show themselves off. And you know what the worst part is? If you take all of the audio out of that and like put some Metallica over it or something, that's actually a really exciting set of gameplay footage. It really is. Not a good way to start off this conference. Not at all. Next up on the chopping block. Well, I guess we shouldn't have expected to get through this whole conference without them talking about Final Fantasy XIV Heaven's Word. It's, by the time this is recorded, it's either already come out or it's going to come out very, very soon, but this one's a little different in the sense that some of you may remember I actually did live streams. I tried to do live streams every Monday of Final Fantasy XIV for quite some time. That game I have played before. I have played extensively, actually, and I enjoyed very, very much for a little while, but after a while I just got to the point where I realized I could get maybe not the same level of experience, but from a gameplay standpoint, pretty much the exact same thing, even better in some cases, from other places for free, and just pay what I wanted as I went. And I'm between a rock and a hard place for this one, I really am. Because on one hand, I know how good that game is. On the other hand, you're paying more for something you already paid for, and paying even more for it every single month. This is just becoming a market where it's increasingly harder to support that kind of business model for an MMO. We're seeing other companies try to get away with something equivalent with like season passes, it's the exact same thing, you'll notice. They're just calling it something different, and I think everybody can smell the bullshit associated with that. It's like, oh, season 2 of the game is coming out, or we have this expansion pack that increases the size of the game a whole lot. You gotta buy the game all over again to get the expansion. Destiny. It's hard. It's hard to make a real call on this one. Because everything that's available here looks good. The new class, the new areas, the expanded pretty much everything. But it's nothing that would make me want to jump back in again, even though I now own the game. There's nothing I see that's worth the price of the expansion, plus an extra, what was it, 10 or 15 bucks every month? Just to continue playing something I already paid for. I don't have the heart in me, man. I really don't anymore. I just don't. You know, out of all the RPGs I expected Square Enix to talk about at this year's show, Star Ocean was not one of them. That was actually a really pleasant surprise, because that series has always had just a dedicated spot in my heart. I love the ideas behind the gameplay. It was one of the first RPGs I think I ever played that had something resembling real-time combat. This was before I even picked up Tales of Symphonia back in the days of the GameCube. And because of that, I'm always interested to see where this series is going next, where how it's going to evolve itself, where it's going to take its story. And the fact that they did that little vignette where they were pointing out where it takes place in the timeline, it feels like they're kind of pushing in that direction too. It's like, this is the next chapter. We've been away for some time, we haven't really talked about this series for a while, but now we're ready to take that step forward, and maybe ready to take the ideas of the game to some whole new places. I shouldn't feel the way I do about this next trailer. I really shouldn't. I should be excited for this game, because once again, Nier was one of those games that just kind of touched me in a really unusual way. It had some interesting concepts. It had this bizarre world that I found strangely charming in a way. And they just showed off a trailer of a girl staring at a monument in the middle of a forest. It's, I think it's Total Biscuit who actually said that Square Enix seems to like announcing games a lot more than they actually like releasing the games that they talk about. They like saying that we're working on something and then it takes half a decade for the game to actually come out. It's... why? Why did you... It's frustrating sometimes because they'll push so hard to make something come out when it's nowhere near a state that's ready to show to people. You start the train way too early, okay? You try to put it on the tracks before you've even got the steam engine fully bolted in and ready to power the damn thing to begin with, okay? But I will say though, that was the most interesting part of the entire show, when the series creator came on stage with the mask that... oh, I loved this game. I should remember this character's name. The Moonhead mask that everybody's talking about. And I love how everyone else was playing it totally straight. Like, they were all bland, boring, talking about their games as deadpan as humanly possible. Other people have to try to sound that bored about something. And he just comes on, the Moonhead, looking like a celestial body with a face carved into it, and nobody even says anything. Nobody even mentions it. I think you could almost feel it in the audience over the Twitch stream. It's like everybody's looking at this like, feeling like, did they just slip out of reality or something? What's going on? Am I still awake, or have I slipped into the lucid dreaming part of this conference? I mean, honestly now. But yes, thank you for doing that. As unintentionally hilarious as that was, I'd like to think, because he didn't mean for that to be as funny as it was, okay? He just doesn't like showing his face in public. Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Not just in Japan. So, please do more of that in the future. Use your unique traits in such a way that it makes magic like that happen. Another game I'm of two minds about is Tomb Raider Go, and I'll explain to you why. On one hand, we've got this really cool little puzzle game that you could play on iOS and I mean it, that was very, very solid. It's one of the few games that I've actually paid for, because so many people told me, hey, this thing is really good, it's very intelligent, it's an assassination game that's actually about assassination. Yeah, go figure. It's about making strategic movements and getting to your target as quickly as possible without any of the BS in between that apparently slowed down the series later on down the line. And yeah, I totally agree with those people. It was all of that and more. But on the other hand, Square Enix has been pushing more and more towards the iOS format as time has gone on, and I'm not saying they're starting to abandon their console efforts. Quite the contrary. If this year's show is any indication, both markets are equally viable to them at some point, but it's just something I'm conscious about. I'm in another hard spot with this one, because if a good game is good, then it's worth playing. It's worth supporting a company just because just by the sheer virtue that they made a quality product. But what happens if they make too much money off of mobile games? Are we going to start seeing Square Enix conferences in the future that are nothing but iOS? God, I hope not. I really, really hope not. So, fingers crossed they keep themselves balanced if we don't give them an incentive to in the future, eh? Speaking of mobile games, here's one I'm actually going to play no matter what. Number one, because I know it's going to be free. Number two, because I've pretty much played this game already. I wrote an article on TeamPizzaProductions.com about how to play the Japanese browser version of this game. It's something I still pop in from time to check out. And that was Kingdom Hearts Unchained, also known in Japan as Kingdom Hearts Key, or X, as the symbol looks to everyone else. What it is this energy-based free-to-play type thing, but it's set in the Kingdom Hearts universe. In fact, I believe it's actually set during the first Keyblade War, for those of you who are following the story of the series. If you are, by the way, my condolences. Your sanity has been forever lost by this point, and you'll never get it back. What I liked about the game is, even in the Japanese format, maybe it's because of the fact that I couldn't understand anything, but they didn't exactly shove the whole freemium currency down your throat. It was one of those things where if you wanted it, you could get it. It's the whole booster pack mentality, because all of your attacks, all of your abilities, they're based off of the strength of these cards you collect, these abilities you collect, and you can choose to use specific ones. It's kind of weird to describe. You have to see the game in motion to really understand it. But when all the systems come together, it's not bad, actually. And the fact that I can now take it with me wherever I go, that makes it even better. I don't have to log in, go through the process of creating a Yahoo ID in Japanese specifically to play something like this. So, from the perspective of somebody who's already jumped through all those hoops, yeah, I appreciate the portability of this thing, and the fact that I'm actually going to understand how to use the upgrade system now. That would be a nice step in the right direction. And then they talked about King Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Yeah, we'll talk about how they handled that situation in the wrap-up at the end, where I talk about my general opinions, but this game in particular, I was having a discussion about this with Hidden in the Truth not too long ago, about the differences between Western RPGs and Japanese RPGs, and what separates the two genres apart, and what the appeal is between some of those games, because despite the fact that it is being produced by a Japanese developer for the most part, or at least published by it, it's still very, very much a Western RPG. Yeah, your character has a predetermined backstory, and the entire world doesn't revolve around your decisions, but your story is in your hands for the most part. You customize this guy's abilities going forward. You decide how you want to play. Do you want to be stealthy, or do you want to just go in guns blazing? And apparently, they're going to great lengths to make sure you can actually take the stealth route this time. I've heard through the grapevine that they are taking that feedback into consideration and saying, yes, you will be able to do that this time. You will be able to play the game however you want, and that's not just us blowing hot air this time. But another thing Hidden in the Truth brought up about Deus Ex is it's one of the few Western RPGs he felt like he could get into because it wasn't distracting, for lack of a better term. The side objectives were there. There were still plenty of things to do in the world. There were still plenty of things you could do off to the side, but the most important thing you could do, the most viable thing to do at any time, always felt like your main quest. It always felt like the story was progressing forward no matter what happened. There weren't 10 billion little things you could go get lost in for hours on end, and I realize that's a taste thing, that's a personal thing. I'm on the opposite side of that spectrum. I like that kind of thing, being able to just go off and do whatever for a while. I appreciate that kind of thing. But I totally see where he's coming from, and that's not just Deus Ex's only appeal either. It's a very cool world. It's talking about these politics that we may very well be getting into in a decade or two. The idea of robots, AIs, integrating themselves into society. And I realize we haven't seen gameplay yet. I totally realize that, and I'm gonna save judgment for when we do, but conceptually at least, I think Mankind Divided looks really, really, really good. Especially because I liked Human Revolution. Mankind Divided is this one. Human Revolution was the last one. There we go. Glad I got everything straight. I don't have to edit in one informative detail. And at last, we got the one reason anybody anywhere wanted to watch this conference in the first place. We finally got in-engine gameplay, real gameplay of Kingdom Hearts 3. And it looks good. It's pretty much everything I wanted. It's you gotta understand something about this. If you had shown this game to me like 5 years ago, I would have been like, yee, Kingdom Hearts is the best thing ever! Because that would have been a little closer to when I played the games, but I have not bought any of the side games in between. I have not picked up any of the spin-offs, any of the remasters, any of the... The only thing I've touched related to that franchise is Kingdom Hearts Key. And I just... Man, my enthusiasm for 3 has had lots of time to cool down. My fanboy embers are almost... We're down to sparks at this point. Don't get me wrong, I'm gonna buy this game when it comes out, okay? You kidding me? Xehanort is gonna die. You mark my words. It's just... for right now, I'm just happy I get to see the game in motion. I'm starting to feel the heat build up again, but this final product, man, it better be worth it. So how would I rank Square's conference overall this year? You know, it hit home during the Sony event. It really did. It hit home during that show because they weren't governing the entire show. They weren't dragging it out over the entire span of, I think, like 2 hours. Just people going on and on and on, just non-stop talking about why the game was good instead of just showing us why. It's sad when the most exciting part of the conference, the most interesting part of the conference, is a dude in a Halloween mask being completely nonchalant about the fact that he's surrounded by business dudes who think this is completely natural. I am so blown away by how boring this show was, especially considering that by comparison, everyone else's show was so good. I think I'm getting that kind of opinion off of this that everyone else seems to be getting about Nintendo's conference, and that it was, and comparatively to everyone else, this was kind of unacceptable. Like, a company that's been through the rounds for this long and has been in the business for this long, who should know by now what makes a good show and what doesn't, to do something like this. It was a letdown. It really, really was. In fact, I think Square Enix actually, I don't know, if you're in the position to actually grade these guys, which I guess I am because I've been doing a tier list this whole show, but to say they lost E3 is a personal opinion, okay? I don't want that to take away from anyone else's enjoyment, and that's what I've been saying throughout all of these videos, is that your own personal tastes are going to affect this show one way or the other. You're going to, maybe for you, Square actually won this year's show. I'd be interested to hear why, if that's your opinion. I'd be glad to hear the reasons, but E3 is all about being excited for things, which is weird to say, especially from someone like me who has learned over the years to embrace what I call the Ben Croshaw mentality, or the Yahtzee mentality, as we all put it here at Team Pizza, is the idea that being a pessimist in this industry has its virtues, because if a game turns out to be good, great, but if it doesn't, you've lost nothing. And it's hard, because you'd expect AAA games like something like Assassin's Creed or Batman Origins, I believe it was, that these are not exactly small names. These are not exactly small developers, and yet the games are still launching in very poorly optimized states. And when we go to tell the developers that there's a problem with this, they just smugly tell us, yeah, we're too busy working on the DLC to actually patch the main experience. Hand us more money and maybe we'll think about it later on down the road. It's, what? But then we've got E3. That one magical day every year when we can just toss that over our shoulder for a second, when we can sit back and go, you know what, for a little while, it's okay to be excited about things. It's okay to just unwrap our present and not have to worry about where the hell in our already overpacked room we're going to put our new toy. It's a moment where you can just turn off the BS detector for a second and just go, you know what, I can be happy for 2 minutes. I can look at this show and just love everything about video games for a little while. Unconditionally for a little bit. And I got a lot of that off of this year's show. There were so many good things. Even everybody impressed me in some way, shape, or form. The new Star... let's just go backwards down the list. The new Star Ocean. I didn't expect that, and I'm really excited for it now. Kingdom Hearts 3. Not overly excited, but I'm gonna buy it. Let's see, going back. Nintendo. Star Fox, man. My second favorite franchise. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Super Mario Maker, too, believe it or not, because... well, I'm a designer. That's my bag. You're giving me a tool set that's basically an even more expanded version of Lunar Magic. Yeah, you bet I toyed with that back in the day. I've got, the Sony conference. Well, pretty much everything that came out of that. Well, almost everything, I should point out. Like, I don't want to go over that whole list again. Ubisoft... Ghost Recon Wildlands, South Park The Fractured But Whole, even EA impressed me, which I did not expect. EA gave me one of my favorite games of the show, which was Unravel. And then there was Microsoft too. This was a good show. Everybody had something, was the great thing about E3 2015. Everybody had something that was genuinely worth being excited over. And in my opinion, that made this all a really, really good show overall. Is no matter where you turned, there was something new to see, something worth looking at and being hyped for. The hype was definitely worth it this year, and it makes me, I know this sounds sappy, but it reminds me for a moment why I chose to be a part of this industry in the first place, man. Who knows? Maybe next year you'll see one of my trailers up there. It's a fat chance. I'll say that much, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to create something that's worth millions and millions of views, millions of people seeing it. So we'll see how that turns out. Thank you all for joining me in this series of recap videos. This is going to be a pain in the ass to edit, not to mention it's going to take forever to render, but thank you for joining me through all this, and hey, I'll see you in 2016 for that year's show too. Maybe I'll see you on the show floor. Here's hoping, right? As always though, I'm Whatthefnu. Later everybody.